In this gripping video, we dive into 5 heart-pounding tales of American tourists who faced unimaginable terror abroad. From the dense jungles of Mexico to the noisy streets of Haiti, these harrowing kidnappings reveal the risk and adrenaline of travel in some of the world's most dangerous places. Join us, and let's uncover the details of these disturbing kidnappings. It was April 2nd, 2019, and Kimberly Sue Endicott was on the adventure of a lifetime. The 56-year-old woman, who was from Orange County, California, had always dreamed of seeing gorillas in their natural habitat. And now this dream became a reality when, on her first day in Queen Elizabeth National Park in southwestern Uganda, she experienced an extraordinary encounter. 2 gorillas approached and touched her. Kimberly's guides remarked on her luck, but this stroke of fortune soon turned into a nightmare. April 2nd, 2019, a Tuesday, was Kimberly's 3rd day in Uganda. That day, she was on a safari in Queen Elizabeth National Park, alongside her guide, a man named Jean-Paul Mirange, and an elderly Canadian couple. 30 minutes into their drive, Kimberly and the others saw 4 men emerging from what looked like a perfectly square bush. Kimberly guessed they were rangers because the men were carrying firearms, a common sight among the park's protective staff. But upon closer inspection, she realized that the 4 men weren't in uniform. In fact, they looked ragged and unkempt. Any notion of safety was quickly dispelled when the men approached the vehicle and ordered everyone out. Kimberly and her guide, Jean-Paul, were made to sit on the ground. The elderly couple were allowed to remain standing due to their age and frailty. In the meantime, the gunmen ransacked the vehicle, seizing anything of value. Then they returned to the terrified tourists and kidnapped Kimberly Endicott and Jean-Paul Mirange. The elderly couple remained by the vehicle as Kimberly and Jean-Paul were swept into a vortex of terror. They were the ones who raised the alarms. The sense of being forcibly pulled away from any semblance of normalcy was both immediate and profound. Kimberly felt pure terror, a kind of fear she couldn't even begin to describe. It was as if she was engulfed by a terrifying brightness. The next few days were horrible. Her captors didn't abuse her, but the woman lived in constant dread. She tried to make herself appear as human as possible to her captors, and in turn, she tried to make them appear as human as possible to herself. It was the only way she could survive. Still, she was plagued by horrible thoughts. The psychological torment was relentless, and she struggled to devise any method that might lead to a less gruesome death. She feared she would be abused and killed in a horrible way. If anything, she thought, let them shoot her. Kimberly briefly thought about trying to run, but she quickly realized she'd get treated pretty badly if she tried to run. Even more, there was simply no place to run. As days passed and 56-year-old Kimberly Endicott struggled to remain calm, a massive Ugandan-led security operation unfolded, closely monitored by the U.S. State Department. Drones, helicopters, and extensive firepower were deployed in an attempt to locate the kidnappers. Back in the U.S., Kimberly's family prayed for her safe return. They prayed for a miracle. The kidnappers used Jean-Paul's phone to make their demands. They wanted to be paid a $500,000 ransom. In return, they made daily calls to show authorities Kimberly and Jean-Paul were still alive. As an extra precaution to ensure they wouldn't be apprehended, the captors took Kimberly and Jean-Paul across the border into the Democratic Republic of Congo, which further complicated rescue operations. After 5 harrowing days, on April 7, 2019, a breakthrough was achieved. Kimberly Endicott and Jean-Paul Mirange were released mostly unscathed at the border between Uganda and Congo. Their captors managed to flee before they could be apprehended. The Ugandan government, in collaboration with the safari company and the U.S. government, had spent those 5 days negotiating with the kidnappers. Though the initial ransom demand of $500,000 was rejected, Uganda's Minister for Tourism later admitted that a ransom had been paid. According to some news outlets, Uganda's Minister for Tourism paid $30,000 for Kimberly and Jean-Paul to be released. Kimberly Endicott's return to the wilderness camp was a moment of profound relief. She arrived barefoot, her pants ripped and utterly depleted, but she was alive. Back at the camp, she showered, ate, and began the process of recovering from the traumatic ordeal. It was February 4th, 2024. 35-year-old Joseph Constantine Bonin Contri, a New York native living in Quintana Roo, Mexico, was visiting a friend of his in the small community of Limones, nearly 200 miles southwest of Cancun. But all dreams of a peaceful visit were soon shattered. That night, according to reports so far, Joseph Constantine Buonancantry was snatched by unknown assailants and thrust into a nightmare. For 3 days, Joseph endured the terrifying uncertainty of captivity. The New York native was reported missing, and authorities started looking for him. Questions abounded. Who were his kidnappers? And why did they kidnap Joseph specifically? And more pressingly, where was the man and how could he be saved? Some of these questions were answered when Joseph's captors allegedly demanded $200,000 for the New Yorker. His abductors took him to a straw hut deep in the Limones wilderness, a remote and unforgiving stretch of land. The Mexican jungle, with its dense foliage and dangerous wildlife, was an ominous backdrop to his ordeal. The jungle is a habitat for venomous snakes, jaguars, and other predators. As such, the dangers of the wild would have been an additional torment, compounding the terror of the 35-year-old's captivity. With no lead, authorities were in a difficult situation. But a breakthrough in Joseph's rescue was quick to appear when locals alerted soldiers to a suspicious taxi from Tulum, filled with armed men, driving through an opening in the jungle next to a highway. This tip led the search party to a location just 325 feet from where the taxi was spotted. Here, in the heart of the wilderness, they discovered the straw hut where Buonancantry was held. It seemed like the man had been left there to die. Soldiers found Joseph inside the hut, bound by his ankles and wrists. Even more, his eyes were taped shut. The man seemed terrified and disoriented. He was unable to defend himself, completely incapacitated. It was also obvious that his kidnappers had fled. They had left behind a tactical vest, Arkansas, 15 rifle magazines, and a backpack containing marijuana. These remnants hinted at the potential violence and danger Buonancantry had narrowly escaped. As they approached, soldiers reassured Joseph of their intentions, identifying themselves as members of the 7th Motorized Cavalry Regiment of the Mexican Army. Only one of the soldiers initiated contact, treading carefully. He asked Joseph whether he was okay and whether he wanted food or water. A disoriented and exhausted Joseph asked only for a cigarette and to have the tape removed from his eyes. The soldier assured Joseph that agents from the public prosecutor's office and the attorney general's office were going to arrive and remove that blindfold from his eyes. Joseph told the soldiers he could not recall the day of his abduction or even what day it was. He was offered water but insisted on being given a cigarette. Finally, he drank some of the water and once again told his rescuers he was doing okay. Joseph Constantine Buonancantry's kidnappers have not yet been apprehended. The case is still under investigation. On November 29, 2022, Monica de Leon Barba, an American from San Mateo, California, was walking her dog, Asa, in Tepatitlan, Jalisco, Mexico. At 29 years old, Monica was a charismatic person who could make friends with just about anyone and was also a very talented photographer. But the serene routine of her afternoon walk turned into a nightmare captured by surveillance cameras. At some point during the walk, 3 cars, a silver Volkswagen Jetta, a gray Dodge Charger, and a white Chevrolet Suburban, approached the 29-year-old woman and her dog. Several men got out of the cars and went to confront the woman. After a short altercation, Monica was forced into the Volkswagen Jetta. Her dog, suddenly free and confused, was left to roam the streets alone as the kidnappers sped away in the 3 vehicles. Monica's abduction was immediately reported. It sparked widespread concern, with friends and family working alongside authorities to secure the woman's release. The shock of her disappearance doubled when Monica's 20-year-old cousin, Gail de Leon, was also kidnapped in Guadalajara just hours after Monica. The FBI quickly identified Monica's case as a targeted kidnapping. The surveillance footage revealed at least 5 suspects involved in the abduction, and the urgency to find her intensified. The situation was grim, but the FBI believed Monica was still alive. They offered a $40,000 reward for any information that could lead to her whereabouts, and released video footage showing her abduction to the public. In the video, Monica was shown wearing a black t-shirt and black pants. She was described as being 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighing 240 pounds, with brown hair and possibly blonde highlights. Authorities hoped these details would help civilians recognize Monica and thus aid recovery operations. Anyone who could provide information about the woman's physical location was asked to contact the FBI or the nearest American embassy or consulate. However, with the details of her captivity still a mystery, the FBI and local authorities worked tirelessly to piece together clues and follow leads. The U.S. State Department's travel advisory for Jalisco only highlighted the dangerous environment, warning Americans against travel due to violent crime and gang activity in the region. The advisory noted that U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents had been victims of kidnappings in the region, a possible explanation for Monica's abduction. According to the advisory, the kidnapping of American tourists in Mexico has been a growing concern, with territorial battles between criminal groups taking place even in areas popular with tourists. Moreover, the advisory says that in places like Guadalajara, these conflicts often spill into areas frequented by tourists, leading to tragic outcomes where innocent bystanders are injured or killed. For 8 long months, Monica's family and friends lived in a state of agony and hope, waiting for news. Her brother, Gustavo de Leon, kept faith that his sister would return safely. And then, after 8 months, Monica was miraculously released on July 14, 2023, 10 days after her 30th birthday. Her reappearance brought immense relief and joy to her family and friends. Monica arrived back in the U.S. on Friday, July 16th, where she reunited with her loved ones, as well as with her beloved dog. Monica's younger cousin, Gail de Leon, was also released and safely returned to the U.S. However, the circumstances of her release remain unclear. The FBI, in their statement about her return, confirmed that an investigation is ongoing and no arrests have been made. The identities of her captors and the details of her release are still unknown. In March 2024, Addison Pierre Malouf, widely known as the social media star Your Fellow Arab, set off on a daring journey to Haiti. His mission was to interview Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, a notorious gang leader who had risen to power amidst the escalating violence that has torn through the Caribbean island. Dealing with dangerous situations was Addison's specialty. After all, that's how he amassed his 1.4 million YouTube subscribers. People loved seeing him explore dangerous, off-limits locations, the kind of places most of us only get to read about. Addison, who was based in Atlanta, had built his online persona around adventure and thrill-seeking. His latest expedition to Haiti was no exception. Despite the U.S. State Department's stern warnings against travel to the region due to rampant gang violence and kidnappings, Malouf was determined to document the turmoil and give voice to those involved in the country's insurrection against what he called a corrupt government. However, this new adventure took a twisted turn, and Addison Pierre Malouf found himself in a nightmarish situation. On March 14, 2024, Addison was accompanied by his Haitian fixer, Jean-Sacre Sean Rubens. They had planned their journey meticulously, even timing their departure to ensure they would arrive in Port-au-Prince during daylight hours. But Addison was aware that he was susceptible to danger. "All it takes is one stupid gang member holding an AK-47 for one thing to go wrong," he said in one of his videos from that period. His words proved prophetic. That day, their vehicle was ambushed by members of the 400 Mawozo gang, an extremely dangerous gang, led by the ruthless Lanmo 100 Jew, a kingpin on the FBI's most wanted list. The 400 Mawozo gang was notorious for their brutal tactics. Lanmo, their leader, had previously kidnapped 17 Christian missionaries, including 5 children, one as young as 8 months old in October 2021. Addison suspected this ambush was facilitated by corrupt policemen who had promised them safe passage. The gang seized Addison and his Haitian colleague Jean, transporting them to an undisclosed location. In the days that followed, Addison's colleague, Twitch streamer Lalam, confirmed the kidnapping on social media. Lalam asked followers not to contact Addison, fearing for his friend's safety. As the news spread, fear and concern grew among his fans and the broader community. It quickly became obvious why the YouTuber was kidnapped when his captors demanded a ransom of $600,000. The first payment of $40,000 was made, but the captors refused to release Addison and Jean. Addison and Jean were released 17 days later, after the captors allegedly received $50,000. The gang returned some of his equipment, including his camera, albeit without the SD card containing his valuable footage. But things didn't end there for Addison. After being released, A dispute with a rental car company made him miss his flight back home to Atlanta. As such, he had to spend even more time in Haiti, where he had just experienced something life-changing. But not everyone believes the YouTuber was kidnapped. In fact, some people say he orchestrated his own kidnapping, especially since he appeared in a video drinking and smoking with Joseph Wilson, a leader of the gang. Addison, however, maintains he was a victim. He revealed how he had to play along with his captor since he was under threat. Behind the videos are 10 guys holding guns, he later explained, underscoring the precariousness of his situation. The FBI continues to offer a $1 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Lanmo 100 Jew, emphasizing the ongoing threat posed by these criminal networks. On March 18, 2023, Jean Dickens Toussaint and his wife, Abigail Toussaint, embarked on what was meant to be a meaningful trip to Haiti, where they planned to visit ailing relatives and partake in a community festival. The couple, both 33, left their 1-year-old son safely at home in Tamarack, Florida, and went on their trip despite the fact that numerous members of their family had tried to discourage them, fearing Haiti was too dangerous. As it turned out, John Dickens and Abigail's family had been right to worry. On the morning of March 18th at about 8:55 a.m. local time, the Toussaints messaged their family to confirm their safe arrival in Port-au-Prince. It was the last contact they made. The couple then boarded a bus to Léogâne, one of Haiti's coastal communes. They were accompanied by a family friend who had met them at the airport. As the bus journeyed through the streets of Haiti, it was suddenly intercepted by gang members carrying military-grade weapons. The armed men boarded the bus and demanded the driver continue driving. They then told the driver to hand them $1,000 if he wanted the bus to continue its journey. Fear gripped the passengers as they watched the tense exchange. The driver was only able to produce $500 and thus complied partially, hoping it would be enough to appease the intruders. But the gang was relentless. Upon reaching Martisson, about 6 miles south of Port-au-Prince, they forced the driver to stop and parked the bus. Inspecting the bus, the gang members noticed the suitcases, a clear indication of travelers from abroad. To them, this meant the people on the bus had money. The gang members once again told the bus driver to give them $1,000. The frantic travelers pooled their money together, managing to collect $700 initially and another $300 shortly after. When the bus driver went to hand over the money, the gang members decided it still wasn't enough. They ordered all American tourists out of the bus. Jean Dickens and Abigail Toussaint, along with their friend, were taken, leaving the rest of the passengers in a state of shock and helplessness. After the Toussaints were kidnapped, the friend who was with them managed to contact his own family and let them know about their ordeal. The horrifying news spread quickly, and the family of the Toussaints was also alerted. Through unknown means, the kidnappers managed to contact the family of the American couple and demanded to be paid a ransom of $6,000. The ransom was paid by the couple's family. But then the kidnappers got bolder. They refused to release the couple. Instead, they heartlessly raised the ransom to an exorbitant $200,000 per person. The family didn't have that kind of money. In the meantime, the family worked with the U.S. Embassy to gather information and help release the couple. But days passed with little progress. Jean Dickens and Abigail missed their son Jace's second birthday, which was on March 28th. The emotional toll weighed heavily on everyone involved. The situation seemed dire, with the kidnappers showing no signs of leniency or compromise. Then, on Thursday, April 13, 2023, Jean Dickens and Abigail Toussaint were released nearly a month after their abduction. The exact circumstances surrounding their release remained unclear, but the news brought immense relief to their family and supporters. There was no immediate comment from the U.S. Embassy, and the details of the conditions of their release were not revealed, leaving many questions unanswered.